Hi, it's Ike and Christine. We're back with IDK Paranormal. Today we have a special guest, and his name is Joseph Baca.
Hi, everybody.
And we have an interesting story today. I'm going to start the story, and he's going to tie into it towards the end. So it's pretty interesting. Always keep in mind the stories are 100% real. We don't make crap up. But first things first. Today's beer. Christine, why don't you bring up this beer? And since it's such a super large can, we're going to split this can. Andy Gator.
You might want to get closer. There you go.
Check this out. I don't know about this stuff.
Your expensive camera doesn't focus.
I get a lot of grief because I call everything an IPA. Glasses, everybody. Oh, delicious and foamy. Wow, we may have to wait a minute.
It's really fun.
There's just a little bit left. So just. Oh, this beer is sponsored by John Holmes, by the way.
It's bitter, but it has a little bit of sweetness at the finish.
It tastes like a home brew.
It does.
Like the stuff I used to make.
And then it turns bitter again.
I don't understand how that's possible.
Might be a little better if it was cold.
I think the production crew should know that cold beer usually goes better. This is in Germany where you serve at room temperature.
Ignorant swines. Beer is not served in Germany at room temperature. It's served in keg temperature. And kegs are generally 10 degrees cooler than ambient temperatures. Enough of the beer history of the great country of Bavaria. So here's the story we're going to talk about today. This happened back, I want to say it was 2004. I might be off by a year or two. And of course it's me and another deputy, same deputy, and it's Halloween of all days. And we kind of look forward to working Halloween because even back then we were into the paranormal stuff. So about 8:30, 9 o'clock, it's dark already. We're the only two out on duty. And we get a call. The dispatch dispatches us to a ranch up in the Manzano Mountains. And the person's on the line saying they need help right now. There's people in the trees. And my husband is trying to get them out of the trees. So we're thinking, badass call. Let's go. And just to preface real quick, tree people, we've been having tree people calls probably in the last 8 or 9 months preceding this call, where in various areas of the county, people report people in their trees. Strange. We've never actually caught anybody in a tree. And excuse me real quick, but I need to introduce Joseph Baca, who was also a police officer at the time. A career police officer, retired and moved on, and now runs a custom food, what do you call it?
I call it a food truck?
Is it really a food truck, or is it just better than that? Because I've eaten there, and he's parked at the Capitol, if that tells you anything, the capital of Santa Fe, and excellent food. And I'll throw a link at the end of this video on how to get a hold of him and try out his grub. It's pretty good. But he's a police officer, and that's why he's here, and his story as a cop's going to kind of feed into what I'm talking about. Back to tree people. Joe, did you ever see tree people? Hear about tree people?
I heard about them, and I remember early on in my career, I rode with Ike. Ike was my FTO, he's my field training officer, so.
The best.
The best. In fact, I probably have a food truck right now, partially because of Ike. He used to make fun of me all the time when I'd show up with some gourmet lunches, and he'd be like, "Hey, fucking Martha Stewart,
that's true.
What are you doing here being a cop?" So, but anyway, I heard about tree people, but mostly just from the older guys from calls. There was every so often a stray call that would come out back then, but I think it was only 1 or 2 that I remember hearing about, and I never got to respond to any of them.
It got so, it happened so often that we've actually, even dispatch started calling them tree people. We have another tree people call, which always made me chuckle. So back to the story. This lady calls 911. She says there's people in their tree. Her husband is trying to cut down the tree to get him out of the tree. So me and my patrol partner, we started heading out of the way. And we were up in one end of the county. This is on the far south end of the county. So it took us a while to get there. And we're entering this little mountain community. And there's a marine-colored Jeep Cherokee coming at us, flashing its lights and stuff. And I'm on the radio with dispatch, and dispatch is conveying the message saying that this is the RP, the reporting person. And they're flagging us down. So they pull over, I pull over, and I make contact with the lady, and she's panicky, she's crazy. She's saying, please, please help, you gotta help. There's some weird stuff happening at our house. And there's people up in a tree, and my husband trying to cut the tree down, all this good stuff. So we follow her to the ranch, and it turns off in this little, 2-lane road, and then we turn left at this wrought iron gate. It's a big gate, and it turns into a dirt road, and this dirt road goes a little ways, and it goes through an arroyo, or a ditch for you non-New Mexicans. Goes through this arroyo, and then ends up at this really old ranch house. You can tell it's been around for a while. Big giant ponderosa pine trees all around it. So we get there, and the first thing I notice is right next to the house is a big ponderosa pine tree. It's probably 4 feet in diameter, and there's a chainsaw stuck halfway through it. And I asked her what's this all about, and she says my husband that's the tree he tried to cut down. Luckily he didn't accomplish that task, because at the rate he was cutting, it would have fallen into the house. Knowing this, I used to be a logger. So the husband is freaking out. He says there's weird things happening at this house. He says they hear chanting at night. There's people in the trees. Just all kinds of weird stuff going on. And we're thinking, maybe they're just crazy. And I'll do a new episode. One of my newer episodes is going to touch on crazy people. So we're thinking these guys are, either drunk or narcotics or something like that. So we go into the house, we talk to them, because we don't see anything going on outside. We look for tracks, there's nothing. So we go inside, we talk to them for a while, we ID them, and both of them, their husband and wife. He's a scientist for the national labs, and she also works for the national labs. I don't know if she was a scientist or not, I didn't get that far, and they were staying at his house. They somehow belonged to a distant relative of theirs. The house had been empty, I guess, but it belongs to a distant relative. And they've been spending the last 3 nights out there just to get away. They were on vacation, and they just wanted to get away and check it out. So we check out the neighborhood, the yard and stuff, and say, there's nothing going on here, so sorry guys, we'll see you later. So we leave. As I'm driving out, the first thing I notice, there's and keep in mind, there's a narrow little dirt trail in the forest. And there's a telephone pole laying across the road. And we all had CBs in our cars, also in our units, so we could freely communicate with each other and talk shit. So I asked my partner, I'm like, hey, do you remember this telephone pole in the road? He goes, no. So I get out and look at it, and I had brand new tires on my unit, and since it was a dirt road, you could see my tracks, and you could see where I drove through there. There was no pole there before. And this pole was, 35 feet long, it was a standard power pole, but no tracks on how it got there. It kind of like shrugged it off. I mean, it was freaking weird. So I go around the pole and continue driving on the dirt road, and then there's a bunch of tires. Just tires, probably 15 or so tires, scattered all over the road. You have to swerve through them. Hey, we were at that house maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, so if somebody's pulling a prank, they did it pretty damn quick. And we get to the gate, and the gate's closed and locked. Now, my partner was the last one in, and we left the gate open. We would never lock the gate behind us. I get to the gate's locked. I'm like, crap. So I stay at the gate, and I tell my partner, I say, go back to the house, and tell him to come up here and unlock the gate for us. So he drives back to the house, and the lady comes back, and she gets out of her car, and she comes up to me, she goes, what's with all the telephone poles and tires on the road? I told you there's something going on. And I'm just like, I don't know. I said, maybe somebody's messing with you. It is Halloween. But keep in mind, this is rural New Mexico in the mountains. There's no trick-or-treating going on out there. It's just in the middle of freaking nowhere. But I couldn't explain it, so I just told the lady, I was like, I don't know. And she goes, I know we left the gate open when you guys pulled in. Why is it closed down? I'm like, I don't know. So she opens the gate, we pull out, and she goes back to the ranch. And me and my partner just go up the road a little ways, park next to each other. We got the windows rolled down. We're talking to each other because it's kind of a strange call. There was nothing else pending, so we're just sitting there talking about it. And we're sitting there maybe less than 10 minutes when we hear a woman screaming. And at first I thought it was an owl. And I remember telling my partner, like, hey, did you hear that owl? He's like, that wasn't no damn owl. And we heard it again. It was clearly a woman screaming. And I see a real dim flashlight jogging towards me on that road. I'm like, holy shit, it's that lady. So we get back, we open the gate, pull in. She's running up towards me, and she's frantic, hysterical, saying, my husband caught one. He hit him over the head with a blue rock, and they're back. And I'm like, all right, get in the back of my car, haul ass to the ranch. We get back to the house. The husband's pointing up at the same pine tree with the chainsaw stuck in it. And we look up there, and of course, there's nothing there. But there's a big blue rock laying at the base of it, and it was spray painted blue rock. I'm like, wow, well, at least the blue rock story was real, And so we gather them up and we go back inside the house. And they're completely freaking out now. They're like shaking, they're scared. And I'm like, what the heck, And the guy asked me, he goes, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, I can't tell you what to do. Can you guys go home? He goes, no, we're not going to let anybody run us off from here. And I'm like, all right. And he goes, the night before last, they were out here, and they heard like Native American drums and chanting. And I'm like, yeah, I can't help you with that either. So eventually we calm them all back down, and they agreed they're going to leave first thing in the morning, because by now it was probably midnight. And they said, we're just going to go to bed, and we're going to go back home in the morning, screw this place. I'm like, that's probably a good plan. They also had a bunch of firearms. So we took their firearms into safekeeping, because by the time we got back the second time, they started drinking. And I'm like, I don't know if these guys should be drinking alcohol with firearms. And they voluntarily said, just take our guns. We don't want to shoot anybody. I'm like, all right, we'll take them in safekeeping. And we left again. And this time we leave, and the gate's still open. And before we leave, the lady tells me, what's with all the bags of hay, black bags full of hay all over this property? I had no idea what she was talking about. She goes, yeah, they're all over the road. When we came here, they're right everywhere. I'm like, nah, I don't know. So me and my partner leave. We pull outside the gate. We go up the road a little ways, just to chit-chat and hoping that these guys will calm down so we don't have to come back. So we're probably a quarter mile up the road west of that house, or the entrance of the house. And we noticed there was a for sale sign. There's a house up there that was for sale. And I'm like, maybe it is kids messing around. There's an empty house up here. Let's go check out this empty house, see if anybody's in it. So we jump the fence, and we get up to this empty house, and we look through the windows, and it's completely empty. And I open up the garage door, and there's wall-to-wall black bags full of hay and straw. I'm like, that's weird, because that's what she said she had seen. And keep in mind, we never found any footprints, tire marks, or tracks, or anything on that damn property. So while we're looking at the hay, we just get back into our units, and we're like, this has been a great Halloween night. It's pretty exciting. They call 911 again, and they want us to respond back to the ranch because the tree people are back. I'm like, wow, we haven't been gone 15 minutes. So we get back to the ranch, and when I get there, the husband's got a coat hanger, and he's trying to unlock the Jeep Cherokee. And
Spider.
Oh, that's added effects. So he's got a coat hanger. He's trying to unlock that Jeep Cherokee, and he's just hysterically he's not getting anywhere. And she's standing by him, just shaking like a leaf. I'm like, hold on. So I unlocked the Jeep for him, and I asked him, what's going on now? And he goes, as soon as we left, probably within 5 minutes after we left, they heard chanting again, and then the electricity turned off to the house. And they ran out of the house. They were just going to jump in the Jeep and leave. And the Jeep's locked, and the keys are in the Jeep. I'm like, holy crap. So, we unlocked the Jeep. We started the Jeep. Told them, sit down in the Jeep, just chill out for a second. And sure enough, the breaker outside on the house was turned down. And we looked for footprints, and it's dry. It's October, and it hasn't been raining or snowing, so it's dust and dirt. There's not a footprint to be found. But the breaker's down. So we come back to them, tell them, hang tight. We're going to clear the entire property, So me and this other deputy, we get our rifles out, and we're clearing the entire property. We're going up and down, checking everything behind trees and bushes. Nothing to be found. And then, but the whole time you're there, you had this overwhelming sensation like something was freaking watching you. I mean, you couldn't shake that feeling. It's like something is there looking at you, but couldn't put a finger on it. So they decided to leave, and we actually follow them out, and we closed the gate behind them. And that was the end of that call. And that, it was probably by 2 o'clock in the morning now by the time we finally finished. This took all night, this one call. That was crazy. So years later, like I said, this was probably 2004 or 5, somewhere in there. And when did we talk about this?
Oh.
Maybe a year ago?
Well, initially, a little bit of backstory. Ike and I have known each other for over 20 years now. And we worked together in corrections, and he was my boss. And then we worked together in the sheriff's department, and he was my training officer and my boss. There's a little bit of a trend going on here. And then we worked together as police officers, and he was my boss. But we've stayed in contact, and we've been friends for all this time. And we've always had that. We played paintball back in the day. We'd go to the mountains. We always hung out. So we got comfortable with each other, and we always would be talking shit about different stories and stuff like that. So you told me this story back when on patrol, heck, like 2003, 2004.
It must have been 2004.
The original time, I mean, and you told me, I mean, right around that time. And it was always this one of my favorite stories that we always talked about, not story, but like experience that you went through. And then just a couple of years ago, we were parked next to each other and we were talking smack, and lo and behold, I brought up the tree people. And I always thought that this tree people story took place in the Manzano Mountains or like in the Sherwood Forest area. I always think of Sherwood Forest as like the scariest place in the Manzano Mountains because of like the Torreon murders and stuff like that. So
and just to clarify, the Sherwood Forest is an attempt at a subdivision up in the mountains that kind of failed. Right? There's maybe 10 houses up there.
And some of them are beautiful though. I mean, there's some amazing houses up there. And then there was some just creepy little shacks. I remember we'd go up there at night and there was just, it was always this place that just gave you this overwhelming feeling that you were being watched. Mm-hmm. So that's where I always pictured right away. And so Ike and I happened to be talking, and we started talking about curses and how some places just hold an eerie effect or an eerie feeling and what can cause stuff like that. And lo and behold, we start talking, and we were talking about this. I was telling him how my aunt and uncle, when I was a child, lived out on the outskirts of the Manzano Mountains on this road, and how we went to go visit my aunt and uncle one time. And while we were visiting them, my aunt told me how they were building a house on this property. Some friends of hers were building this house on this property, but there had been so many delays, so many things had went wrong with it, and it was because there was a curse on the land. And she went on to say that like infestations of termites had happened, infestations of different bugs. There had been tons of weird animals that have like went and messed with the construction of it. I mean, the electrical part, everything that you could imagine that would go wrong with building a new house happened to happen with that on that property. So we were talking about that, and I said, hey, yeah, it's right up on this road. And Ike happened to say, hey, well, that's where the tree people call happened at. And I was like, no way. Like, I always thought this happened in this whole different area. I always pictured like way deep in the Manzanos, like at Sherwood Forest or up off the 4th of July loop or something in this area. But it was the same exact place. So Ike asked me a couple more questions, and I give him the description of the property and how you get there. And Ike's like, that's the tree people call.
Yeah. Place definitely has a history.
Yeah.
And of course, your family goes a long ways back out here, right?
Yeah. And, you know, I grew up with my grandparents, and they were very, well, not they, we are very old school and very Catholic. So there's lots of mysticism, lots of spiritualism that takes place in this area is known for all of that, all the different things that are out here. And so curses, everything like that was something that was just talked about because it wasn't anything that was taboo. It wasn't anything that was different. It was something that was just there. And there was some areas that you were told that had just bad juju involved with them. And when we started talking about that story, and then I was telling him about different areas that were cursed, and happened to bring up this area that had been told to me from a child that was a cursed area, and it happened to be the place where the tree people were at.
Yeah. And like I said, you can definitely feel the energy. And that whole area is just, you can feel it. There's something going on there.
We went there, and I remember it was one of those like feelings of dread the whole time when I was there. And like I said, I was much younger. I was probably only 9 or 10 years old when we went out to that property when they were building the house. And it might have been...
That was like 50 years ago, bro.
It might have been just because the impending dread of someone just having told these stories of all the things that were going on, or just that powerful feeling for being in that place. I can't tell you the truth because, like I said, I was 9 or 10 years old, but it was something that I'll always remember. And I remembered well enough that when we were talking about these different things, it stood out immediately that that's one of the places that I always remember that was cursed. One of those places that always had this horrible, bad aura around it. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened to be that place. And I always thought that was so cool. So when you called me and said that, hey, you want to talk about a story, that was the story that brought to mind right away, because it was always my favorite experience that you had. And then the fact that the two of us had both been there just at different times, and it was just a place full of bad juju.
And the uniqueness of this is, back in the days when we were cops, and I'm still a cop, we didn't talk about this stuff. Like he said earlier, once we got to know each other, we started talking about stuff, because back in those days, if you told another officer about a weird experience you had, there's a really good chance, that he would tell one of your supervisors, and then the supervisor would question whether or not you're sane or not, and may send you off to a fit-for-duty physical. So people, even 10 years ago, law enforcement did not talk about this. In light of all the ghost-busting movies that are on now, people are more open, more cops are into it now, and more cops are talking about it. But back then, it was taboo. You just didn't, I remember asking the sheriff one time if the SO was haunted. And he was dead serious, looked me in the eyes, and he goes, you mentioned it again, I'm going to send you out to get re-psyched. I'm like, all right, the place is not haunted, I get it.
That place was haunted.
Damn right it was haunted.
But it's something that we've been talking about since, heck, the 90s. Like you were saying, we became friends, and we were all comfortable with it, and we'd started telling different experiences. Corrections, there was always something wild going on at the prison, and some places just had a bad feeling to them.
Now let me ask you this, Joe. Being of Hispanic descent, growing up in a Hispanic household in a rural community, and practicing Catholic religion, have you ever talked or heard or seen what they call a bruja or curandera or anything like that? Because I have. In Monzano, close to the area that you call your stomping grounds.
All right, so there's, I don't know how far you want to go with this story, because I think you know where this could easily lead to.
A whole different episode.
Like a whole different episode, but yeah, I've had lots of experience with that stuff. Yeah. As far as curanderos and with witchcraft, there's lots of people that are brujas out here, and some of them were self-proclaimed, and some of them were...
Some legit,
and some that just had that, I don't know if you would say that, that stigma about them, that people would say, hey, you stay away from them or that people, because they practice the dark craft.
Yeah. We may have to do an episode on that one of these days. It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it was one of the ones before we talked about this, it was on the list of something that we should really talk about, because there is a lot of history.
Yeah. Christine, did you ever see a tree person?
No.
Would you like to?
Kind of, yes, actually.
I fell out of a tree one time.
So you're like an honorary tree person.
You were almost a tree person, but you fell out.
I fell out. I wasn't in good enough graces to be a tree person.
Do you have anything to say about this whole thing, Christine? You just sit in the middle here not saying anything today.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say. I wanted to sit on the left, but you won't let me.
Was this a good story?
Yes.
Did it scare you?
No.
Nothing scares you?
Not really.
All right, do we have anything else to add?
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, once again, this is Joseph Baca, Santa Famous Eats?
Street Eats. Santa Famous Street Eats.
And I'll put a link at the end of this. Check it out, man. It's awesome food. And hopefully we'll have you back someday and we'll talk about some other stuff.
I think we have a cool witchcraft story that we both, again, are tied into, that we know about.
Yep, that'd be awesome. All right. Once again, you know what you got to do. I'm not going to say it. But let's make this channel grow. And there's still a half-ounce silver floating around somewhere. We're about to cast it into silver bullets.
Can you like and subscribe to his channel? Because I want to win that half-ounce already.
Once we get over 100, the next one's going to be a 1 ounce. And once we hit 1,000, it's going to be a 5 ounce. So There's your motivation right there.
I'm going to have to spread the good word. The gospel of Ike.
Bring it.
Oh, God.
All right, is that it? All right, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.